Welcome to Think Tech on OC16, Hawaii's weekly newscast on things that matter to tech and to Hawaii. I'm your host, Duke Oishi.
And I'm your co-host, Maria Kishen.
In our show this time, we'll cover interviews by the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum and Hawaii News Now in the making of the last episode of their energy series, Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy.
We joined them on a trip to Maui for interviews of Maui Mayor Alan Arakawa and Rick Rocheleau of the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute.
First, we attended the interview of Maui Mayor Alan Arakawa at the County Building in Wailuku, Maui. Linda Brock of Hawaii News Now conducted the interview. Mayor Arakawa was responsive to her questions and candid in his answers.
Every year, we purchase billions and billions of dollars, $4 to $6 billion worth of foreign petroleum. That petroleum is money leaving the state, which means from an economic development standpoint, we're losing that benefit. Now, when we start looking at $4 to $6 billion, we'll also realize that we spend for electricity almost 4 times more than any place else in the United States. The cost to our average citizens is 4 times more. Okay? So we're paying very, very high costs for it. At the same time, when you look across the state and you realize we have enough energy that we can produce here to cover the entire state and some. We have the potential for solar energy, the potential for wind energy, the potential for biomass, the potential for creating ocean thermal and ocean movement energy, geothermal. When we can have all of these renewable energies, essentially keeping all of that $6 to $8 billion in state, you have to realize that this economic development is one of the biggest engines that we can possibly develop in the near future. Now, what's preventing us from actually doing this? Well, we're a group of islands and we're separated. One of the things we need to do is we need to realize that if we connect all the islands into one chain whereby we share resources, then the market, mostly Oahu, that has a huge demand, and all of the outer islands, which produce and can produce most of the energy that Oahu doesn't have space to produce. I mean, when you look at the usable area on Oahu, Oahu as a community has built on almost everything it has. It doesn't have the massive amounts of space available to put in all the windmills, all the solar panels, except on existing buildings. The outer islands, on the other hand, have massive areas that are not overdeveloped, that can fit in most of these structures. Now, the overall policy of being able to create the connectivity needs to be through the undersea cable. We need to put in that undersea cable. The bill was passed last year in the legislation to start the process, and we need to connect all the islands. After having connected all the islands, if we're all in one big grid, now the energy becomes much more manageable. Then we start talking about how do we plan and how do we get from being completely energy non-self-sufficient, we're importing everything, to complete self-sufficiency. We have to realize that the overall least expensive energy that the state will have long-term is going to be geothermal. And that geothermal will probably produce somewhere between 70 and 80% of all the energy in the state long-term. Ocean thermal, ocean currents, movement, that's going to be another area that's going to be self-sustainable and it's going to be cost-efficient, probably right after geothermal. Those two have the potential of covering all the power in the state. Now, we do have photovoltaics, we do have wind, we do have biomass. Now these also, while we're developing geothermal, while we're developing the ocean thermal, which needs a lot more research, there's going to be a window of about 20 to 30 years where the need for wind, the need for photovoltaics, are going to become very important because they're available now. People can put those systems in right now and fill this gap. We also have this need for using biomass. Honolulu's H-Power is creating energy. We have here on Maui, our HCNS company is using biomass. Biomass, we have a program that we're currently going through a request for proposal. Then we're opening the bids right now. We're doing analysis to be able to take all of our trash and create a very, very valuable substance. This is to be able to produce energy. So it's no longer going to be rubbish. It's no longer going to be something that we would throw away. It's going to be something that we're going to be trying to hoard to be able to produce energy with. It's a valuable resource. And the same thing needs to happen on all the islands. Stop looking at rubbish as rubbish, start looking at it as a valuable commodity. That will allow us to be able to take care of one of the major challenges within our community as well. And biomass will remain something that we use long term because we need to be able to take it from disposed trash to a very valuable substance. And that will create a percentage of the energy. When you start looking at these programs, now it comes a question of how, when, why, and how do you manage it. It stands to reason that the company that's been here for creating electricity long term, Hawaiian Electric Company and all of its subsidiaries, are going to want to maintain their market share of everything. But just like the telephone company, we used to have one big telephone company that was literally forced to dismantle itself, and now look at all of the different technologies that have come into play. You hardly go into a home anymore and see a phone connected to a wall with a cord. I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw a phone that couldn't move. It wasn't portable. And for most families now, they're not even using a phone at home. They're using the iPods and all of these portable phones because it's much more flexible and there's no sense in having two bills. Most of our children are growing up today. These are not only phones, these are their computer systems. These are the systems where they're keeping all their information. The capability of the telephone company to go from a standard that was there a long time and nobody wanted to move away from, then once it happened, all these new technologies were able to develop. It's the same evolution that has to happen here for electric energy. Electric energy right now, when you take the broad spectrum, people are paying $200 to $500 a month for electricity, some even more, some much more. But you take an average. If you have photovoltaic on your home, I recently installed photovoltaic. My electric bill went from about $400 a month down to last month was $18.75. If the average family can save $200 to $300 a month on electricity, this is a tremendous savings. Now with the payback programs that we have, there is a cash outlay up front, but the return, 3 to 5 years, after that your system is virtually free.
Then we drove over to the Maui Economic Development Board building in Kihei, Maui, for an interview of Rick Rocheleau, director of the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute. Again, Linda Brock of Hawaii News Now did the interview. As you'll see, it was worth the trip.
We do research, what people typically think of the university research group doing, where we're in the laboratories trying to develop new technology, new processes, new materials. We have some very significant programs where we're doing what we call testing and validation, putting hardware out in the field, working with the utility. An example would be a project we have going now where we have a 1 megawatt battery actually operating on the utility grid to actually look at its effect on the operation of the grid. We work on alternative fuels, so that can be hydrogen, biofuels, LNG could fall in that category. We do work on what would be people consider renewables, mainly renewable energy generation. Some solar activities, developing new materials is an example. We do work on integration, and that's probably our single biggest area right now, and that's really how do you integrate all of the available technology onto the grid and still manage the grid in a way that gives reliable power to the consumer. This is probably, for a standalone grid, this is probably the highest penetration of intermittent renewables that I know anywhere. You hear about places that have 60, 70, 80% wind, high concentrations of solar, Denmark, for example, but they're connected to other countries, they transport power, they're connected, they can go back in. Maui has to be reliable, self-sustaining. It comes down to that fact that the more wind that's on there, the greater the variability of that resource over short periods of time, and the less resource the utility has to respond to it. And at some point you get to a balance where, for example, at night, the wind is running, the utility takes some wind, their units are down there at minimum load, and if they take more wind, they have to turn off units that can't be turned off. That said, small amounts of storage may allow the utility to change the way they operate. The utility has what they call regulating and contingency reserve to be able to instantly respond to significant events, loss of a load, a line going down, loss of a generator. There may be new ways of looking at that would allow them to take increasing amounts. But somewhere around 25, 30% of renewables in terms of the total power generated, it starts to become very difficult to take too much more. If the cable's going in, people have to be very careful about the tracking of it, make sure they don't go through sensitive areas, make sure that everything's done environmentally correctly. I think that can be done. I think it's more a matter of the community coming together and, to be honest, all the islands being able to work together. I think there's a perception, or there has been a perception, and certainly in some of the early ways it was presented, it was, we're going to put large generating stations on the neighbor islands and ship the power back to Oahu. What we're trying to do now is to look at it a little more holistically and say, well, what if we connect the islands and they really are working together? So in some cases, it may be power is going from Oahu to Maui County. Maui County can be shipping power back if they actually have the wind resource. But most of it is the willingness of the people to accept the fact that, and to be convinced and be educated that this is going to benefit everybody in Hawaii and not just Oahu. And so I think it's a perception and a cultural and a political issue more than it is a technical issue. I think in our case it's going to be the necessary action to get away from oil, and then it will be selecting the technologies that can do it at, and there's two issues, can I do it at lower cost? I think it's very difficult. Renewables that are going on today are subsidized to an extent. I know we can argue about what gets bigger subsidy, oil or renewables, but there are subsidies for the renewables. But it's a balance between cost and long-term energy security that needs to be considered in this. But you're not going to see technologies, I don't think you're going to see a turnover where there's going to be new technologies here next year that are going to make the ones that are out there today obsolete. So it's a matter of having some flexibility in the purchase power agreements that are signed with providers. They have to be secure enough to make the investment to put systems in, but at the same time, you want to make sure that what they get paid is reasonable given what the costs are and technology. So it's really, a lot of it is now in the policy integration, public will realm, and then it's going out and making sure you pick the best technology and bring it in, and you don't get sold something that sounds great but it's really not there yet. There may well be entrepreneurs that come in with pieces of that solution and might get very wealthy providing it to Hawaii. I mean, the wind developers are one example. They're making a reasonable amount of money, I think, on their wind farms. If storage comes into play and we figure out how to use it, and so it's a blend between us driving it and technology providers coming in. And actually part of what we've done these last couple of years is try to go out and look at technologies that are out there and try to bring some to Hawaii to understand how to integrate them in and make the grid operate better. So yeah, we're not going to do it all alone. It's going to involve, the federal government is going to involve technology providers, people developing technology, whether it's U.S. or even outside the U.S. companies. It's going to be, how do you bring in the best technologies and make them work in Hawaii?
Says this is what we're going to do. I mean, if it's a nice thought that all the stakeholders have a say. It's a nice idea. Is it practical?
The hard part is, though, I mean, really being practical, is the stakeholders in it and those with an interest in it frequently do have very detailed, very valid information. So you really do need to keep the group engaged. I mean, it's awfully easy. As soon as you go off, if the university says, we're going to go do this, and we're not going to do it by interacting with these other people, we're going to be up at this level again that doesn't take into account the realities of the situation, both from the utility operations perspective. I mean, you get a lot of people in universities that were, oh, we have enough solar, we have enough wind, we ought to be at 80%. Well, there's real reasons why the utility doesn't do it. I gave a talk at a conference in Germany 3 months ago, and I described somewhat the system over here on Maui. And somebody raised their hand and said, I don't want to insult you, but how did your utility let this happen? And they weren't talking about the utilities being reluctant to do stuff or anything else. They were asking, how did they let there get so much renewables on their grid without stopping it before it got to this point? So, there are valid issues. Got to keep moving it forward. But the problems are, are difficult. So you need to keep all the stakeholders involved, because without their inputs, you're really not going to solve the real problems that you have to solve. It's not just an academic solution, and and I don't agree with that utility just go do it exactly the way they want. We need to keep pushing them, but it's a balance, and it's not going to be a straight. Unfortunately, it's not going to be a straight line. It's going to zig and zag, and some things are going to work and other ones won't so well, and unfortunately, there's still a lot of missing information. We've done studies. We've looked at, what we call gen-tie. If there was a big generation, and I'll say generically, in Maui County, and it came to Oahu, we know how much fuel that would save, but we don't know all the other implications of that. I don't think anybody does yet. At the same time, if you do it different ways, there's still a lot of uncertainty in my mind about what the real cost of some of these things are going to be. So, we need this plan. It's this hard balance between people want it to go fast, and you get we don't have any more time to plan and to study. We've got to go forward. But these are now getting to the point where they're big projects. It's hundreds of millions. It could be billions of dollars. So you better make sure that your answers are really good, or ultimately you're not going to get the people making the investment, or the ratepayers are going to get stuck in the long term. So, we probably, doesn't mean we stop doing things, but we need to keep doing the looking at what's out there and the planning. It's not going to be pick a plan, there it is, let's go march down that path. It's an ongoing effort we have to do.
Maui is a special island with special energy resources and special requirements. Alan Arakawa is a popular mayor, well-versed in the energy issues of his island. It was great to be able to attend this interview, and in the same day to catch up with Rick Rocheleau. We're glad we came along for the ride.
If you didn't catch the last episode of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum Hawaii News Now series, which was entitled Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, it's still on the websites for both of them, hawaiienergypolicy.hawaii.edu and hawaiinewsnow.com. Check it out.
This was a conclusion of a 2-year series on the subject, and it was an excellent treatment of current developments and issues in Hawaii's clean energy initiative. We hope they continue the series, at least on an annual basis going forward. It's so important for the public, that is, you, to know what's going on. ThinkTech will, of course, continue to cover the story.
In the meantime, we'll do what we can to cover Hawaii, the state of clean energy, on our ThinkTech radio series, especially every Wednesday afternoon from 4 to 5 p.m. on KGU 760 AM.
And now let's take a look at our Think Tech calendar of events going forward.
Check out ThinkTech's 4 to 5 p.m. Drive Time radio series on KGU 760 AM for Energy on Wednesday, Asia in Review on Thursday, and ThinkTech Fridays on Friday. We also stream all of our radio and talk shows from 2 to 3 and 4 to 5 p.m. on the internet every weekday. Visit thinktechhawaii.com for our live stream and YouTube links. Raise your awareness on ThinkTech Hawaii.
On Thursday, June 27th, the Hawaii Venture Capital Association and ThinkTech will present a luncheon panel program at the Plaza Club entitled Healthcare in Hawaii. If you think it's expensive now, wait till you see what happens. The program will be moderated by Virginia Pressler of Hawaii Pacific Health. You can sign up for these programs on hvca.org.
And now here's Bill Spencer, president of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, with this week's Spensation.
Anyway, so next week, next Thursday, 27th of June, a long-awaited program about healthcare in Hawaii, the Affordable Care Act, which we covered last year, and we said last year there was a transformation in process. Well, this is kind of it's a snapshot, a status report on how that transformation is doing.
That's right.
From some of the people who were there last year, but others too, to see exactly how this was going to affect us in various walks of life. The doctors, the hospitals, the government, what is the government doing? And of course, the insurance companies like HMSA and people like you and me, patients, who really care about staying alive.
And small businesses.
And small businesses. That's probably the most important one of all, because Hawaii is built on small businesses. We have representatives of all those constituencies on the panel. It's a panel of 6, strong panel, and the moderator is really strong, Ginny Pressler from Hawaii Pacific Health. And I attended a meeting that you set up just to see how they were doing, and it was really vital. They're excited about this program. They got a lot of ideas, and they got a lot of questions that they're asking each other, but I expect that our audience is going to have more questions still. One of the key words from one of the speakers was confusion. We asked him for a word. His word was confusion. I thought that was really interesting because, there is a fair amount of confusion. Now, a year later, after the transformation has ostensibly begun, we have confusion.
Right.
And we have to dispel the confusion. This program, hopefully, will dispel the confusion.
People were sort of in the clouds. I mean, we had a new organization that was just getting formed that's supposed to be concerned about outcomes and data collection. We had a physician who will be back again this year who is concerned about the paperwork. The physicians want to spend their time treating patients, not filling out forms. And I don't think there was much thought being given to actually how the Affordable Care Act would be implemented. And now here we are a year later where the rubber hits the road. And it's going to be implemented whether we like it or not. It's here, it's coming, and I think there are going to be a lot of challenges. Well, I think the medical care industry is sick anyway. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have a large percentage of people that have no coverage whatsoever. The insurers that are covering the generally healthy population, which means the younger population, they love it when the chronic diseases show up when people are Medicare eligible, and the government has to pay for that anyway. In fact, as you know, most really critical health problems happen post 65 among the elderly. Are there alternatives? I mean, now the government's saying you've got to get health insurance no matter what. Maybe the medical savings account is an option for people so that they can save during the good years when they're healthy and be prepared when things turn south as we get older. So it's a lot of interesting problems to solve. Hopefully this will be a step in the right direction.
One thing about healthcare is it affects all of us. And the other thing about it is that it is interrelated to other aspects of the quality of our life and society. We can't afford not to attend to it. We can't afford to let it run away with us. So this program ought to be real instructive. You always take notes so you can do your spensation at the end of the program. I would urge everybody to take notes on this one. This is like a short course in what's really going on, and it's profoundly important.
Well, it's time to reserve if you haven't already. Go to hvca.org and sign up today.
We'll be right back to wrap up this week's edition of Think Tech, but first we want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Miko on Maui and Helco on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company, and CEO of CBI Polymers, a tech company in Hawaii.
The High Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle and Cook, Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future.
Collateral Analytics, a Hawaii-based tech company empowering the real estate industry with greater and faster access to the tools and data they need to make better informed property investment decisions.
Okay, Maria, that wraps up this week's edition of Think Tech. Remember, you can watch Think Tech on OC16 several times every week. Can't get enough of it, just like Jay Fidel does. For additional times, check out oc16.tv.
Totally, Duke. For lots more Think Tech videos and for underwriting and sponsorship opportunities on Think Tech on OC16, visit thinktechhawaii.com. Be a sponsor or volunteer and help us reach Hawaii.
I'm Duke Oishi. Thanks so much for joining us on Think Tech. You can watch this show throughout the week and tune in next Sunday evening for our next important weekly episode. Aloha, everyone.
I'm Maria Kashem. See you next time.
My name is DJ, and Think Tech is outstanding.